We get older. Our priorities change. Things like having a big group of friends may not seem as important anymore. The truth is, you don't need friends after 65. This might surprise you, but as we discuss the reasons, it will become clear. Embracing independence at this stage can lead to more happiness and peace. It's about living life on your terms, without the pressure of maintaining friendships. Stay tuned to learn 7 reasons why this is a great choice. In your younger years, friendships often revolve around seeking social validation and fitting in. You may find yourself trying to impress others or keeping up with social groups just to feel accepted. Whether it's in school, work, or among peers, the need to be liked and admired can drive many of your relationships. Friendships can sometimes feel like a way to prove your worth to others or to confirm your place in a group. However, by the time you reach 65 plus, that pressure starts to fade away. The need to impress and fit into social circles no longer holds the same weight. You've lived through many experiences, both successes and challenges, and you realize that your happiness doesn't depend on others' approval anymore. At this stage, you've already built your legacy, whether through your career, your family, or your personal accomplishments. You've learned that social validation doesn't define your happiness. Instead, you define your own worth. You no longer need a group of people around you to validate who you are or your achievements. You have the confidence and peace to know that your value comes from within. Friendships are no longer about proving yourself or chasing approval. They are about genuine connection and shared experiences. You don't need to impress anyone, and you don't have to constantly seek out validation from others. You are enough just as you are. Take John, for example. At 65 plus, John had spent most of his life climbing the corporate ladder. He was always surrounded by colleagues and acquaintances, many of whom he considered friends. But as he got older and retired, he started to realize that many of his friendships were based on work or social convenience, not genuine connection. These relationships had been built around his job and status, and once that part of his life ended, many of those friendships faded away. Instead of trying to keep those relationships alive, John shifted his focus. He stopped trying to impress people or maintain friendships that no longer brought him joy. Instead, he focused on hobbies and activities that truly made him happy. Whether it was painting, gardening, or spending time with his family, John found that by embracing things that brought him true joy, he felt more free and at peace than ever before. John learned that life after 65 didn't require a constant need for social validation. By focusing on his own happiness and letting go of the pressure to impress, he discovered a newfound sense of freedom and fulfillment. As you get older, the value of peace becomes much clearer. When you were younger, being around people and attending social events might have felt essential. You might have enjoyed the noise of large groups and the excitement of socializing. However, as you age, you start to appreciate quiet moments and the calm that comes with them. The constant need for socializing starts to feel less important, and you realize that peace is far more valuable than the noise and obligations of large gatherings. Friendships, while fulfilling in many ways, can also come with their own set of obligations. There are phone calls to return, events to attend, and unspoken expectations to keep in touch. These commitments, though well-meaning, can become tiring over time. What once brought joy can begin to feel like a burden as you age. At some point, you may find that social obligations drain your energy, and you long for more peaceful, solitary moments. Quiet moments like enjoying a book, walking in nature, or simply sitting in silence become more fulfilling than attending yet another social gathering. The pressure to always be busy or surrounded by others starts to fade, and you realize that solitude can bring peace, not loneliness. Being alone doesn't have to mean feeling isolated. Instead, it becomes an opportunity to recharge, reflect, and enjoy your own company. Take Margaret, for example. At 74, she had a very busy social life. Her calendar was filled with lunch dates, group activities, and regular phone calls with friends. But over time, Margaret began to notice that many of these gatherings started to feel repetitive and tiring. The conversations became predictable, and some of her friends seemed more interested in gossip than meaningful discussions. What used to be enjoyable began to feel like an obligation. One day, Margaret decided to take a step back. She stopped attending every social event and started saying no to invitations she didn't look forward to. Instead, she focused on spending time with herself. She began reading the books she had put off for years, and she took long walks in nature. She found that these quiet moments brought her more joy and fulfillment than any social event could. Margaret realized that solitude wasn't lonely, it was peaceful, and it gave her the space to reconnect with herself. By embracing solitude, Margaret discovered a new sense of joy in the quiet moments of her life. She learned that peace, not socializing, was the key to her happiness. As you get older, you begin to understand that not everyone you call a friend is truly there for you. By the time you reach 65 plus, you've likely experienced friendships that seemed important but didn't add real value to your life. Over the years, you start to realize the emotional cost of maintaining shallow friendships. These relationships can drain you, especially when you realize that they are one-sided, with you putting in more effort than the other person. Friendships come with unspoken expectations. You expect your friends to check in on you, offer support, and be there when you need them. But when those expectations are not met, it leads to disappointment. You may reach out, but they don't respond. You may make the effort to spend time with them, but they don't seem interested. Over time, these disappointments build up, and you start to feel like you're giving more than you're getting in return. This emotional toll can become exhausting, and it may leave you questioning whether these relationships are worth keeping. As you age, you start to understand that fewer friendships often mean fewer disappointments. You no longer have the energy or desire to maintain relationships that don't bring joy or add value to your life. Instead, you focus on the relationships that truly matter, whether with family or friends who are genuinely supportive and caring. Fewer but deeper connections can bring more satisfaction and peace. Take David, for example. At 78, David realized that many of the friendships he had maintained over the years were one-sided. He was always the one reaching out, making plans, and putting in the effort to keep the relationship alive. But the other person rarely reciprocated. It took time for David to recognize this pattern, but once he did, he felt a shift inside. David decided to stop maintaining these friendships. He stopped putting in the effort where it wasn't being returned. Instead, he focused on the relationships that truly mattered to him, like the ones he had with his family. By doing this, he felt lighter and more fulfilled. He didn't have to waste time or energy on relationships that didn't serve him anymore. David learned that having fewer, more meaningful friendships allowed him to focus on the people who really supported and cared for him, bringing a sense of peace and joy into his life. As you reach 65 plus, time becomes a more precious commodity. In your younger years, you might have felt like you had endless time to spend on various activities, including socializing and meeting friends. But as you age, you start to realize that time is limited, and you begin to value how you spend it more. You start to understand that not every social obligation is worth your time, and you become more mindful about where you put your energy. As you get older, you naturally become more selective about how you spend your time. You realize that you don't have the luxury of endless hours to fill with activities that don't bring you joy. Friendships that require significant effort but provide little satisfaction or happiness should be reconsidered. Instead of wasting time trying to maintain relationships that don't contribute to your well-being, it's better to focus on things that truly bring you peace and fulfillment. Take Richard, for example. At 80 plus, Richard used to enjoy social gatherings, parties, and meeting up with friends. He was always the one who loved being part of group activities. But as the years went on, he started to notice that many of these social events began to feel more like obligations than enjoyable experiences. The conversation started to feel repetitive, and he realized he was attending gatherings out of habit rather than because he truly wanted to. At some point, Richard made a conscious decision to change how he spent his time. He stopped saying yes to every invitation and started focusing more on activities that brought him genuine happiness. He began spending more time reading, something he had always enjoyed but had never made enough time for. Richard also started taking long walks in nature, which allowed him to connect with the outdoors and clear his mind. By focusing on activities that truly brought him peace, Richard felt more fulfilled. He no longer felt obligated to attend social gatherings just to keep up appearances or meet the expectations of others. Instead, he spent his time doing what mattered most to him, and in doing so, he felt a greater sense of happiness and contentment. Richard learned that when you become more selective with how you spend your time, you can focus on the things that bring you real joy. By letting go of activities that no longer serve you, you can find more peace and fulfillment in your later years. As you get older, you begin to realize that the most important companionship comes from within. When you're younger, you might focus a lot on relationships with others, friendships, romantic connections, or family. But as you age, you start to appreciate the value of spending time with yourself. You learn to enjoy your own company and find joy in solitary activities. This doesn't mean you're lonely. It simply means you found contentment and peace in being alone. Solitude doesn't have to equal loneliness. In fact, it can be an opportunity for self-reflection, personal growth, and inner peace. You can use this time to recharge, reflect on your life, and connect with your own thoughts and feelings. When you embrace solitude, you begin to understand that you don't need the constant presence of others to feel fulfilled. True happiness and contentment come from self-companionship, from accepting and loving yourself without needing validation from anyone else. Take Elena, for example. At 76, Elena had spent much of her life maintaining a busy social calendar. She was always attending gatherings, meeting friends for lunch, and keeping up with family events. At the time, it seemed like the best way to live, and she enjoyed the social interactions. However, as she grew older, Elena started to feel drained by these activities. The constant socializing became tiring, and she realized that the conversations and gatherings weren't as fulfilling as they once were. One day, Elena decided to embrace solitude. She stopped forcing herself to go to every event or maintain a busy social schedule. Instead, she began to spend more time on her own. She found joy in reading books she had put off for years, taking long walks in the park, and simply reflecting on her life. The quiet moments gave her a sense of peace that she hadn't experienced in a long time. Elena realized that true happiness didn't come from the approval or company of others. It came from being at peace with herself and enjoying the activities that made her feel content. She found that solitude, rather than being something to fear, was something to embrace. By spending time with herself, Elena discovered that the most fulfilling companionship is the one you build with yourself. Letting go of old friendships that no longer serve you can open the door to a more fulfilling life. As you age, you may start to realize that some of the relationships you've held on to are no longer adding value to your life. These friendships may have once been important, but over time, they may have become draining or simply no longer aligned with who you are now. Letting go of these relationships doesn't mean cutting yourself off from the world. It means freeing yourself from the pressure to maintain connections that no longer bring you joy. Releasing social obligations creates space for more meaningful activities. When you stop feeling obligated to keep up with social commitments that no longer feel rewarding, you give yourself the freedom to focus on things that truly bring you happiness. This could be spending more time with loved ones, pursuing personal passions, or simply taking the time to relax and enjoy your own company. By prioritizing what makes you happy, you open up the opportunity to live a more fulfilling and peaceful life. Take James, for example. At 77, James had realized that many of his friendships had become one-sided or no longer brought him happiness. He had spent years maintaining these relationships out of habit, but they had started to feel like work. He was always the one reaching out or making plans, and these friendships had begun to drain him rather than lift him up. After some reflection, James made the decision to let go of friendships that no longer brought him joy. He stopped putting in the effort to maintain relationships that felt like an obligation. Instead, he focused on activities that made him happy, like improving his health and spending more time outdoors. He began walking more, hiking in nature, and even joining a local group for outdoor fitness activities. By embracing these activities and focusing on his health, James felt lighter and happier. He was no longer bogged down by the pressure of maintaining friendships that didn't serve him. Instead, he was able to pursue his true desires, spending time on activities that brought him peace and fulfillment. Letting go of those old friendships allowed James to create space for a life that truly aligned with his needs and happiness. In the end, James found that life became more fulfilling when he let go of relationships that were no longer serving him. He embraced the freedom to focus on what mattered most, his personal happiness, and felt more content than ever. At 65 plus, you have the freedom to live life however you choose. By this time, you've likely spent years following the expectations of society, whether it was focusing on work, fulfilling family duties, or meeting social standards. But as you get older, you realize that you no longer have to follow those pressures. You can finally live your life on your own terms, focusing on what truly makes you happy and fulfilling your personal dreams. You now have the ability to control how you live your life, free from the constant demands and social pressures that once guided your decisions. No longer do you have to follow the path set by others or worry about what people think. Living life on your own terms brings a sense of powerful independence. It's about making choices based on your own desires, interests, and needs, not because of obligation or expectation. This newfound freedom allows you to focus on the things that bring you true joy and peace. Take Thomas, for example. At 72, Thomas had spent most of his life adhering to the pressures of society. He worked hard in his job, focused on his family, and always did what was expected of him. For many years, he followed a set routine, never taking the time to truly focus on his personal passions. But after retiring, Thomas realized he no longer needed to live by others' expectations. He had earned the freedom to do what he wanted, when he wanted. One of the first things Thomas decided to do was take up woodworking, a hobby he had always wanted to try, but never had time for. He also began traveling to places he had always dreamed of visiting, but had put off due to work commitments. Whether it was a quiet cabin in the mountains or a cultural city abroad, Thomas was finally able to explore the world and engage in activities he had long desired. By living life on his own terms, Thomas found true joy and fulfillment. He no longer had the burden of societal obligations or the pressures of work. Instead, he focused on things that truly made him happy, such as woodworking and traveling. This freedom gave him a sense of peace and satisfaction that he had never experienced before. Thomas learned that true happiness comes when you are free to live life for yourself, without the need to please others. By embracing his independence, he discovered a new sense of joy and fulfillment that only came when he lived life on his own terms. Letting go of unnecessary friendships doesn't mean isolating yourself. It's about prioritizing your well-being, happiness, and freedom. Reflect on your own life. Do you feel obligated to maintain friendships, or can you embrace the independence that comes with living on your own terms? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. How do you plan to embrace more independence in your later years? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Your support helps us continue creating helpful and inspiring videos.